Udilo yaruno purabhavas. Vijamani gaura yamani jagi. Don't understand. Bakata shanu haloi asate gela nagara braje. Bakata shanu haloi asate gela nagara braje. Tathai bajalo kol gana gana tahe jajera ro. Kenoi be Allah Sahoy Nabajari Doyaraje Jivonaya Nita Jana Hasan Tahinana Vidha Vipadaba Namaskar kori jatan tumi taka hoy apon kaje Namaskar kori jatan tumi taka apon kaje Jivaya kalyana sadhana kan jagate asiye moduyana Krishna nam shudha kori apan jurao bhakti binoda pran nam shudha kori apan jurao bhakti binoda pran nam bina kichu nahi koyaro chauda bhuvana maje nam bina kichu nahi Gaura Chandra Bole Jeev Jago Gaura Chandra Bole Kotha Nidra Jao Maya Pisachi Rakole Kotha Nidra Jao Maya Pisachi Bajibo boliya aise sansar bitore Bajibo boliya aise sansar bitore Bhuliya rohile tumi ovidya rabore Tomar loite ami hainu yavatara Tomar loite ami hainu yavatara Ami bina bandhu yara ke ache tomara Ami bina bandhu yara ke ache tomara Ene che aushodi maya nashi barala Hari Nama Maha Mantra Lao Tumi Magi Hari Nama Maha Mantra Lao Tumi Magi Bhakti Vinoda Prabhu Charane Poriya Hari Nama Mantra Loilo Magia Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Tabe kino ebe ala sahoy nabajari doya raje Jivanaya nita jana hasa tahe nana vidha vipadaba Namaskar kori jatan tumi taka hoy apon kaje Namaskar kori jatan tumi taka apon kaje Jivaya kalyana sadhana kan jagate asiye moduyana Tapanna rupe ridga gan viraje Avidyati mira tapanna rupe ridga gan viraje Krishna nam shudha kori apan jurao bakati binoda pran Krishna nam shudha kori apan Nam bina kichu nahi koyaro chauda bhuvana maje Nam bina kichu nahi koyaro chauda bhuvana maje Jeev jago Gaura Chandra bole Jeev jago Kotha nidra jao maya pisachi rakole Kotha nidra jao maya pisachi rakole Bajibo boliya aise sansara bitore Hile tumi ovidya rabore Tomare loite ami hainu yavatara Ami bina bandhu yara ke ache tomara Ami bina bandhu yara ke ache tomara Ene che aushodi maya nashi barala mantra lao tumi magi Bhakti vinoda charane poriya
Vinoda
Say Harinama mantra loilo magiya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Haribol.
Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajanandana Yashodanandana Brajajanandana Jamuna Tira
Please, what do you think? I don't mind.
Jamuna Tira Bananani Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Samad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavindra ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Swami Ito Bhaktavindra ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Swami Ito Bhaktavindra ki jai. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Hi, Krishna Mother. Welcome.
Krishna.
Nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm quite all right. And you look like you're in some very nice location. Where are you?
I'm at home.
Your home is on the seashore?
No, it is a background setting. It's my background.
Oh, okay. But it's actually a moving background.
Yes.
Quite nice.
Thank you, Mother. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you again.
Hare Krishna, yes.
Welcome. So I will put the verse on the screen so we can start, please.
Yeah. Ready to go?
Yes, Mother.
Because they've already sang Jai Radha Madhava.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
don't need to do that.
Yeah.
So reading from Canto 1, Chapter 19, and this 19th chapter of the first canto, this is the last chapter of the first canto. So we're, the first canto is so relishable due to it being the first book that Prabhupada introduced to us, and he brought over with him on the Jaladuta 200 copies. They were the first canto in 3 parts. So today it's 19th chapter, text 17. I will say word by word with the translation first. Naturally, I start coughing right away. Iti thus, sma as in the past, Raja, the king, Adya Vasaya, perseverance, Yukta, being engaged, Prachina, eastern, Muleshu, with the root, Kuseshu, on the seat made of Kusa straw, Dira, self-controlled, Udak Mukha, facing on the northern side, Dakshina, on the southern side, Kule, bank, Aste, situated, Samudra, the sea, Patnya, wife of the Ganges. No, wife of. Just one second. Swa, own, Sutta, son.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Verse 17. 1-7.
Wait a minute. Wait. I had, hold on, let me check this here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just checked with Srivas. So the first one, 1917, right?
Yes.
So that's, I'm just doing the word by word and translation, and then I'll read the verse.
Okay.
Sutta son, Nyasta, given over, Bara, the charge of administration. So I'll chant the Sanskrit verse now. Iti sma raja dea vyasya yukta prachina muleshu kuseshu dira udan muko dakshina kule aste samudra pat nyaya swasuta nyasta bara.
Yes.
So the translation by His Divine Grace. I'm reading from my book because the screen is too small for my eyes.
Okay.
In perfect self-control, Maharaj Pariksit sat down on a seat of straw with straw roots facing the east, placed on the southern bank of the Ganges, and he himself faced north. Just previously, he had given charge of his kingdom over to his son. Purport. The river Ganges is celebrated as the wife of the sea. The seed of kusa straw is considered to be sanctified if the straw is removed from the earth complete with the root. And if the root is pointed toward the east, it is considered to be auspicious. Maharaj Cricket handed over the charge of the administration to his son before leaving home, and he was thus fully equipped for all favorable conditions. Om Agyan Timrandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakshunilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Bhaskachade Satarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaivyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnave Yo Namo Namaha. So Hare Krishna to everyone. I have a quick question. Have your temples opened up yet? Are you open? Your temples?
Yes.
Good. And everybody is doing well?
Yes, Mother.
Oh, wait a second here. I just, hold on. I don't know if the thing, one of these technical glitches. Okay, back again. Hare Krishna. The screen disappeared for a moment. So I'm glad to hear that good news. So there's a lot that was to be learned, as I already mentioned, from first canto. And each and every chapter is giving very precise information to help the living entity who's in a conditioned state of light wake up and find his path back to Godhead through the mercy of the Lord. So a man's personal, there was a comment made in one of the early purports on this chapter concerning Maharaj Pariksit. The comment was, a man's personal misconduct affects all his family members. You know, sometimes we think it doesn't matter what I do, it's only going to affect me. But actually, that's not the way it works. Whatever, and especially what the head of the house does, whatever he does, the entire family members will be affected. So Maharaj Pariksit desired the calamity of the curse to only fall up himself. He took that upon himself because by suffering personally, he would be restrained from future sins. And at the same time, the sin which he had committed, which really wasn't a sin, but that would be counteracted so his descendants would not suffer. And Prabhupada there's like some noise. I don't know, maybe somebody can put off your mute your mic because.
Yeah, it's done.
Okay, so Prabhupada commented on this. This is the way a responsible devotee thinks. So where wealth and strength are not engaged in the advancement of Brahminical culture, God consciousness, cow protection, the state, the home are surely doomed by providence. So if we want peace and prosperity in the world, Prabhupada instructed every state, every home must endeavor to advance the cause of Brahminical culture for self-purification, and God consciousness for self-realization, and cow protection for the best food to continue a perfect civilization. And of course, nowadays there's so much confusion, understandably, Kali Yuga confusion. But I mean, over simple things, there's so much confusion, even including the position of the cow. So we have people that will refuse to drink milk because of the way cows are now being horribly mistreated. And it's somewhat understandable. I mean, especially if you've ever seen any of these type of dairies where the cow is just tortured for drops of milk. At the same time, we need to protect these cows, and the cows provide the best food for preparing the brain for self-realization and a perfect civilization. So these three things, Brahminical culture, God consciousness, and cow protection, these are the responsibility of the state or means the government. And the government should employ revenue, finances to advance these three items and educate the populace to prepare for death and not become distracted by so many social causes and other causes that are, I don't know, this, again, there's like, yeah, if everyone can please click off your, mute. Thank you. So Prabhupada was saying that employ revenue for these three items and educate the population to prepare for death, because that death is coming, that's for sure. And if you aren't prepared, there's so much fear and bewilderment. And at the time of death, we understand the body is going to go through some great changes. And if one has not properly developed a consciousness, they can become completely bewildered at that time. So to be free from all material association means to completely cease, to stop from committing further sins. Okay. I see myself as, and then there's another background. Is that your background? Strange. So to meditate upon the lotus feet of the Lord means to become free from the effect of all previous sins. This is the effect of meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord. And that meditation also includes following the instructions of the Supreme Lord. That's what it means to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And the conditions of the material world are made so that one, willingly or unwillingly, one will commit sinful activities. Even you don't want to do it, it will happen. Arjuna was even asking Krishna, how is it that I'm forced to act, even though it's not what I want to do, not what I intended to do? So in this case, the best example is Maharaj Parikshit himself, who was recognized as sinless. He was a pious king. He was a monarch for the entire planet, which he inherited from his Yudhisthira. But he became a victim of an offense, even though he was always unwilling to commit such mistakes. So the sages had gathered, and they came to meet Maharaj Parikshit, and they weren't coming so much that they were coming to, like the common person will come on the plea of taking a bath. in the sacred river. Maharaj Pariksit had sat down on the bank of the Ganges, and then these saintly persons were coming. Even they had no internet, they didn't have any Wi-Fi, they didn't have any computers. The sound vibration was so powerful from the pure devotees that the message came out. And so they came to meet Maharaj Pariksit because they could foresee as a secondary aspect, one, Maharaj Pariksit was leaving his body, a great soul, but Sukadeva Goswami would be coming and speaking the Bhagavatam, and they wanted to hear that. They were eager for that. And when they came, when they arrived, Maharaj Pariksit followed proper etiquette, so proper protocol. First he stood to receive them, and then he bowed his head to the ground. And he was showing his respects to superiors. And Prabhupada said, this is an excellent etiquette, which obliges the honored guest deep in the heart. In other words, the honored guest in the heart, of course, is the super soul. But these guests who were coming were honored guests who were coming on behalf of gaining spiritual knowledge and hearing the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada said that even a first grade offender is excused simply by this process of bowing down, honoring the persons. So Maharaj Pariksit, although honored by all the rishis and kings, he was himself a source of honor. He was highly honored, being the king and being a pious king. But still, he was welcoming all the big men in that humble etiquette in order to be excused from any offenses. And Prabhupada commented here that generally at the last stage of one's life, this humble method is adopted by every sensible man in order to be excused before departure. And I think anybody who's familiar with Srila Prabhupada's pastimes with his departure Leela know that he begged forgiveness from his godbrothers for any offenses he had made during his preaching. And they all acknowledged, no, there was no offense, you made no offense, you were doing what you had to do. But still, Prabhupada, he was requesting forgiveness from them. So the transcendentalists are generally, in general, they don't associate with people who are too enamored by the external beauty of God's creation. By advanced knowledge and spiritual realization, the transcendentalist knows that the so-called beautiful world is nothing but a shadowy reflection of the reality. In other words, the real world is the kingdom of God. And what we're experiencing is a shadowy, perverted reflection. So learned transcendentalists are not very much captivated by royal opulence or anything like that. And even Maharaj Pariksit, as the royalty, was not even captivated by all his wealth. So he was condemned to death by an inexperienced Brahmin boy. But actually, how are we to understand that? And Prabhupada explained that factually, he was being called by the Lord to return to him. And in doing so, set an example for all humanity. And this is another sign of greatness, that a great person is always concerned for others, for the welfare of others, and in a larger sense for all humanity. So even though Maharaj Pariksit was securely trained in transcendental attachment for the association of the Lord, he had found some allurement of mundane family life so strong that he realized, I've got to cut this right now. Beautiful verse a few chapters ago, 1:841 in the prayers of Queen Kunti, how she's begging the Lord to cut off these ties of family affection. Chindi, cut off. So a pure devotee cuts off these limited ties of affection for his family, limited, and broadens, he widens his activities of devotional service for the benefit of the fallen souls. And the typical example given is the band of 6 Goswamis who followed the path of Lord Chaitanya. All of them, they belong to most enlightened and cultured and rich families. But they left that aside to follow the path of the Lord and preach the bhakti cult. And in doing so, they were benefiting the massive population. And the idea is to cut off all family affection means to broaden the field of activities. Without doing this, no one can be qualified as a brahmana, or a king, or a public leader, or even a devotee. And we have our own example of Srila Prabhupada, who left his home and family to broaden the fields of activities, means to generously preach the mission of Lord Chaitanya's movement outside of the borders of India, all around the world. And sometimes it's experienced that the Lord, out of his special affinity towards a weak devotee, breaks the family affection by force of circumstance, arranged by his all-powerful energy. And in doing so, he causes the devotee to become completely dependent on him, and thus clears the path for his going back home, back to Godhead. So the most important function of a devotee is to have complete attachment for Lord Sri Krishna, the Father of all living beings. And Krishna, he has himself returns that attachment. So when Kunti was praying, cut this limited ties of family attachment, cut it. What she was praying for was to develop firm attachment for the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So that is the meaning of cutting the limited ties of family affection, is to develop greater attachment for the Lord. And the demigods, they take pleasure to see somebody going back home, back to Godhead. And so they were also present for this departure of Maharaj Pariksit. And the demigods are pleased by a devotee, and so much so that they will help the devotees in all respects, which in turn pleases the Lord. And Prabhupada gave an interesting piece of information. There's an invisible chain of complete cooperation, an invisible chain of complete cooperation between the Lord and the demigods and the devotees on earth. So, of course, we know the Lord is always in our heart in the form of super soul, and that way we're never alone. At the same time, there's this whole chain of command of our well-wishers, that an invisible chain in complete cooperation of the Lord, the demigods and the devotees on earth. So when Maharaj Pariksit heard from Sukadeva Goswami that one should worship the Lord only and no one else, even if you're full of all desires, or even if you're desireless. By hearing this, Maharaj Parikit's natural affection for Krishna was strengthened. And Prabhupada put in one of the purports that to become a pure devotee of Lord Krishna, 2 things are very much essential. And that's namely having a chance to be born in a devotee family and having the blessings of a bona fide spiritual master. So many of us, we didn't get the first part, to be born in a family of devotees, but by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we got the blessings of a bona fide spiritual master. And now some some of the children, our children, they get both blessings, being born in a devotee family and the blessings of a bona fide spiritual master. And in the case of Maharaj Prithiv, by the grace of Krishna, he also had both opportunities. So to become liberated, well, actually, Lord Krishna gave Maharaj Prithiv a chance for further development in devotional service by introducing him to Sukadeva Goswami. And he describes Sukadeva as a stalwart devotee of the Lord with perfect knowledge of self-realization. So by hearing from a bona fide spiritual master, Maharaj Prithiv was able to perfectly concentrate his chaste mind upon Lord Krishna as a matter of course. So becoming liberated means to become free from this dehatma buddhi, or the illusory attachment for personal bodily coverings and everything connected with the body, namely wife, children, all other entanglements. And we know it's difficult, householders, to maintain all the householder affairs. One has to increase the bank balance. One has to be careful about finances. And in order to display material assets, one has to keep good relationships with friends and relatives, as well become very careful about maintaining the status quo. This is called, Prabhupada described the material civilization and material attachment. In other words, the hard struggle for existence. So quite often this is a problem for devotees, how to deal with the keeping a good relationship with the family and relatives, especially if those family and relatives are not devotionally inclined. They may not even be favorable at all. At the same time, you want to maintain some iota of say good relations. So devotees sometimes just get rid of these relatives, walk out the door, slam it shut. I mean, even myself, when I was 18, on my 18th birthday, I said goodbye to my family. I left the house. I said, by the way, I'm not coming back. I had already secured a job, and I was admitted in college in San Francisco. So I was going from Sacramento, California to San Francisco. And I won't say that that was renunciation, because renunciation means giving up sense gratification. That's what renunciation is. And then it may also include giving up your family, etc. It was what you say an incomplete renunciation, giving up this family. I had no attachment, so I wasn't really giving up anything I was attached to. I could see my family was not a happy, they weren't, as we say, a bunch of happy campers. Everybody was mother doing the duty, father doing the duty, brother and sister struggling to, do their duties, but without any joy, without any happiness. And I just saw that my whole life up until my 18th birthday. And I was thinking, this isn't what I want. This isn't what I want. And so at a young age, I made the determination that I had to leave this situation. But just leaving something without having a good plan in place doesn't guarantee success. So, okay, I had a job, I had school, but I didn't know what was the goal of life, what was the meaning of life. I didn't know where I came from. I understood at a young age I was not this body, so I understood that, but I didn't know what I was, and I wasn't finding the answer. So initially I went to college, but that lasted 3 months because I saw these people, they don't know anything either. And I just one day left the classroom. It was a you have to take philosophy. It's a forced, you must take it. And I just heard so much nonsense. One day I walked out, I put my books on a bench, and went away from that college. And I said, I'm not going to learn anything here. And then I tried to have life experiences. And when you don't have spiritual knowledge, you're just looking, but you don't have knowledge. Okay, I wasn't the body, but was I? What was I? You can get into all kinds of trouble and end up, with degraded activities. So it's really important to have the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master and the association of devotees of the Lord. So Lord Krishna gave Cricket this opportunity for development and devotional service through the introduction of Sukadeva Goswami. So devotion for Krishna means negation of material attachments. In other words, giving up, simply giving up without attaching to Krishna is not going to advance one. You might get some, momentary relief from the aggravation of mundane life in the household, but without that Krishna connection, Prabhupada called it, one attachment is the path of darkness and the other is the path of light. So the attachment for household paraphernalia in the Lord, path of darkness, and the attachment for Krishna is the path of light. And he commented, this attachment for household paraphernalia and for Lord Krishna go poorly together. So, most of us are in an interim state. We are trying to sincerely develop our attachment for Krishna, but we still have lingering attachments for different aspects of material life. As you go on, it's not such necessarily gross attachments. It's not necessarily gross desires for sense gratification, but, we want to be comfortable. And so we make our little ways of being comfortable. But it creates kind of a spiritual schizophrenia. On the one hand, Krishna, on the other hand, a little sense grab Maya. You just keep going back and forth like that. So really, we have to just realize you can't have it both ways. I mean, you can try, but you're going to get disturbed and you're not going to make spiritual advancement. So the expert devotee can turn everything towards the path of enlightenment by an attitude of service to the Supreme Lord. And in this, we're living at a time that in this modern age, and, like you're reading these purports, it's completely amazing because these purports were written prior to Srila Prabhupada's arrival in America. He came in 1965, so they were probably many of them written even in the 50s, early 60s. And he's speaking about things in such a way, he's looking right out the window right now today, describing what's going on. It's very amazing. So this activities of the modern godless civilization, people are more concerned with the economic development and sense gratification and have not any inclination towards religious sentiments. The religious sentiments too, if you want to develop it, means you have to do some austerities. And austerities is just not part of the mindset nowadays for the human civilization. It's quite the opposite. The practical experience of Maharaj Parikshit is disclosed, and it's revealing that the transcendental topics of the Lord act like an injection when received by the sincere devotee from a person who is uncontaminated by material things. Just like if we go to we're not well, we go to a qualified doctor, sometimes you have to get some injection, but if the doctor is qualified, he knows the proper amount to give, and the person can be assisted. One time in India, we were all going to the first Kumbh Mela that we were going to ever experience. It was in 1971. And we had no idea what to expect there. It was just, nobody knew anything. We just knew that there was going to be a large gathering of sadhus on the bank of the Tribeni. The Tribeni is where the three rivers, the Ganga, Yamuna, and the Saraswati, come together, although you don't see the Saraswati. And oh my God, just getting there. We're on a train with not just wooden seats. You know, we had to go like 2 days on this train with wooden seats. And at night for sleeping, there were like on top of you came down one other seat, and on top of that another. So it was called 3 tiers on the boards. In other words, a very uncomfortable situation. No fans, no AC, of course. And at one point, you know, the trains would stop and go because they were those kind of, you know, cheap trains. And sometimes animals would get on the trains as well as people. And I myself had this severe case of boils on my leg, and I was trying to ignore it, but it was pretty hard to ignore because it was like my entire leg was covered with these pussy boils that had started to bleed. So at one point, the train stopped at one of these little pit stops. A few goats got off and a few more goats and chickens got on. And this man who had been on the train, we didn't know him, but he had observed that, you know, I was bleeding. And he said he spoke a little English and he wanted to take me to a hospital. And I was like, well, I can't leave. I can't leave. I don't even know where I'm going. I mean, we didn't even know the name of the place where the train was taking us. We just knew we would arrive and somebody would be there and take us to wherever it was we would be ultimately going. But he insisted, and even the devotees thought I should go. So I got off the train with my daughter, with an unknown man carrying my little suitcase, and we trudged through the darkness of night in some little village. It wasn't even a city, it was a village with dirt roads, and we come to what was called the hospital. Well, the hospital was shut down for the night. There was only one sleepy caretaker, a couple of cats, and there was like a big hammock full of little babies. And the little babies didn't even have identity bracelets on. Like in America, when your baby gets born, they put in a little thing around the wrist so the baby won't get mixed up with another baby. So there I am at this hospital without any doctor, without any nurse. And finally they gave some kind of, you know, the caretaker, some kind of like things to like cover the wounds, the bleeding boils. And we go back to the train station. Another train came, we got on the train. It's still dark. And then we get off the train, and I'm at the total mercy of a total stranger in a total strange unknown situation. And we're walking in the dark, and all of a sudden I'm like bumping into some kind of soft things. It turned out those soft things were camels lying on the ground for the night. So we finally maneuvered our way through the camels, and tiny little bit of light was just starting to come up on the horizon, but not enough to see clearly. And all of a sudden, clack, right in front of us, there was a barrier. It turned out there were some kind of government guards, and they had big, long rifles. So they put their rifles like this so we couldn't pass them. But the man explained, I don't know what he explained to him, it was in his language, but then the rifles went up and we were allowed to proceed. And I started wondering, would I ever see the devotees again? You know, here I am bumping into camels and getting stopped by people with rifles. I don't know where I am, you know. And the sun started getting a little bit brighter. And all of a sudden, quite still a distance, but I saw the Ganges. And my first time, I knew it was the Ganges because I knew we were heading that direction. And I was just stunned. And I was so stunned, I didn't even think to make obeisances. I just stood there holding my daughter in my arm and my little suitcase. And I was in my mind chanting, and all of a sudden I heard a kirtan. It It was coming from a distance, but I heard, ding, 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 ding. And then I saw this great big lorry, those kind of lorries in India that are all colorful and gigantic. And in the back of the lorry were the devotees, and they were having kirtan. So suddenly I saw, oh, everything is probably going to be okay. And so we were staying at Prabhupada Brahmachari's ashram. It was the first time they'd ever seen Westerners, which to speak of ladies, because it was a Brahmachari ashram. But they welcomed us very wonderfully and simply. And they also saw that I was bleeding. So one of them wanted to take me to a doctor. So I thought, yeah, okay, I have to do something about this. So I followed the person, and he went to the river. And there at the Ganges was 4 bamboo poles with a rice bag overhead, like, to shield from the sun. And sitting in that little shelter was a man with a big black bag. And turned out that was the doctor. Kind of an unusual doctor's office, but he opens his bag, he takes out a great big huge needle, he doesn't even wipe it off, and he jams it into me, and I'm thinking, this could be the death of me, I don't know, but Krishna sent me here, so let's see what happens. And by Krishna's mercy, I was healed, and within a few days, and they never came back again. I got off on that tangent because when I mentioned this practical experience of Maharaj Prickett, revealing the transcendental topics of the Lord, acting like injections when they're received by the sincere devotee from a person who is uncontaminated by material things. So even in the material world, we have to take knowledge from the right person. We have to take medicine from the right persons. In other words, the reception of the message of the Bhagavatam from professional men, heard by a Karmakandya audience, does not act miraculously. The devotional hearing of the message of the Lord, it's not like hearing topic. Therefore, the action will be felt by the sincere hearer by experiencing the gradual disappearance of ignorance. So, sometimes people aren't sure how we can gauge our advancement, but there's so many ways that can be done. And right here it's mentioning that the gradual disappearance of ignorance. And the other point about the Bhagavatam, although it's pure, if it's heard from the lips of a professional person, it will not have the beneficial reactions, because the person who's speaking is adulterated by material desires. So Prabhupada said, therefore, it doesn't act miraculously. And we hear that saying, milk touched by the lips of a serpent has a poisonous effect. So this is the case here. So hearing the message of the Bhagavatam from the right sources are like spiritual vaccinations against the all-pervading material energy of the Lord, and they will automatically remove our mundane attractions. So the laws of the Lord, actually the laws of the Lord are quite severe because they can't be disobeyed by anyone without consequence. So even the monarchs, they must work under the laws of the Lord. Sometimes it's considered like a king or a president, that they're above the law. And one time, Srila Prabhupada was asked that question by higher agreement, was the king above the law? And Prabhupada said that the king was a representative of Krishna. So Maharaj Prickett, he was a representative of Krishna. And because he was a representative of Krishna, he was a devotee of Krishna. He was also a devotee of Krishna. And therefore, he would follow the laws of Krishna as given in the Bhagavad Gita. So in this way, the monarch is never above the laws of the Lord. Either they act in accordance with the Lord's laws, or they're going to get churned by the reactions of working against those laws. So 5,000 years ago, there was, I was reading this the other day, it's in another chapter, 17th chapter. So that was 5,000 years ago, Prabhupada commented how there was one Dhritarashtra. And so we all know Dhritarashtra, it was just, had nobody's welfare in mind. And he was trying to get rid of his own family members. So 5,000 years ago, there was one Dhritarashtra. And he said, but at the present moment, there are Dhritarashtras in every home. Again, here we have, 55 plus years ago, a purport that is applicable at the moment. So sticking to family life until the fag end of life, Prabhupada said, this is the grossest type of degradation. So there's an absolute need for viduras, for saintly persons, to educate the Dhritarashtras. And Srila Prabhupada came with that purpose in mind. And that is also one of our primary essential purposes as members of ISKCON, is to properly educate the Dhritarashtras of the world. So we must know for certain that a particular position in which we are now set up is an arrangement of the Supreme Lord in terms of our own acts of the past. So the Supreme Lord, he's acting, he's present as Paramatma, localized Paramatma in the heart of every living being. And it's said in the Bhagavad Gita in 13th chapter, 23, that therefore he knows everything of our activities at every stage in life. And he rewards the reactions of our actions by placing us in some particular place or circumstance. And it's only he, the Supreme Lord, who can change the course of our karma when we fully surrender to him. That this human life is meant for finishing all kinds of miseries of materialist existence. And in order to do this, our life must be so regulated that we can actually achieve the desired goal. We must become dhira. Dhira means one who's not disturbed, even when there's sufficient provocation. Srila Prabhupada mentioned one time that the sign of one's greatness is how much one will remain undisturbed, even in the face of great provocation. So self-realization is obstructed by undue affection for family. And if anyone is able to forego these relationships, he is called dhira. Or you can take these mundane attachments and develop them in place of them, develop attachment to Krishna. And then the family affection will be in its right proportion. So this real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one is practiced to fully depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by the mercy of the Lord, Maharaj Parikshit was fully capable of facing the time of death in the proper manner and leaving behind for us his wonderful example. Prabhupada put down in one of the purports, said, Lord can protect his sincere devotee in any awkward circumstance. And this practice, we have to practice. So therefore it should begin at home, devotional service at home, hearing and chanting the holy name, hearing about the qualities, form, pastimes, entourage, and the association of pure devotees. And this practice will help awaken one's God consciousness in proportion to one's sincerity of purpose. So, then persistently, Prabhupada gave another hint, persistently endeavoring on the line of self-realization helps a person to rise to the conditions of a narottam. So a narottam, Prabhupada describes as a first-class human being. So you start your dhira, you're undisturbed, and then by persistently endeavoring, you come to the level of Narottam. So I'll conclude with, in the Shastra, it is said, this is from a lecture Prabhupada gave in October of 75. In the Shastra, it's said that the Kali Yuga is full of faults, so many faults. It's an ocean of faults. But there is a very nice thing. Astihi akomanahan ganaha, one very great quality. And what is that? Kirtana deva krishnasya mukta sangha param rajat. If you simply chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, then you will become perfect. And Prabhupada commented, is that very difficult? Chant Hare Krishna and you will become perfect. But we are so unfortunate. We're not even prepared to chant. Prabhupada one time said, it is our dog-like stubbornness. We won't chant. So this is our position. So we have to make a little determination. I shall henceforth chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And then everything will be all right. So Srila Prabhupada's transcendental life was fully displayed by the way he lived without any hidden agenda, no motives, 100% engaged in Krishna's service, specifically through the medium of preaching and teaching Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan Yagya. And he accomplished this by sleeping very little, eating very little, and being very regulated in his life, very consistent. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Thank you, Mother, so much for your nice class. Thank you so much. I have one question in there. We were talking about Kunti prayer.
Yeah.
Asking for calamities. It actually means praying to, to love Krishna more than the family affections.
Yeah, see, the verse you just mentioned is a more well-known, everybody knows, let these calamities happen time and time again.
Yes.
Except when they happen. But the verse I was chanting, what I mentioned, she was asking for the knot of family affection to be cut.
Yeah, so my question is that if we pray like Queen Kunti, actually many devotees pray like that unknowingly. And then when calamities are coming, they begin to question Krishna. Why am I serving Krishna and having these problems? But they have been desiring to imitate the great souls through their prayers. So why is it that when we make desires and our thoughts takes action and our wish are fulfilled, we still lament, why are we suffering going through this? Why we are the cause of what we're going through our trying to imitate advanced devotees in prayers.
Yeah. So just the point you made, in trying to imitate. Imitation is not good. We should follow in their footsteps. And the difference is by imitating, just like, you know, we could put on our tilak, on our sari, put our hand in a bead bag, so many things. That won't change anything. What changes is the heart. When we become fully determined and serious. Because if we were actually serious and we actually made that prayer for calamities and we got a calamity, we would be so grateful. Oh, Krishna has recognized me and he's sending this. It looks like a disturbance. It looks like a disturbance, but actually it's an opportunity for me to take one step more out of this material situation. But instead we protest. It means our seriousness is not complete.
Thank you so much. Our next question is from Mitravinda Devidasi, please. Unmute.
Haribol Mitravinda, Hare Krishna. You need to unmute.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Please accept my obeisances. Prabhupada, thank you so much for being here today. Mother Malati Dd. My question is, First of all, we're so fortunate to have Srila Prabhupada as a perfect example of how to walk through these steps. These steps of, he grew up in a Krishna conscious family. He was exposed to Krishna from the beginning. He's raised in a Krishna conscious way with, not these morals that relate to false ego, in that way, but with deeds that equate to acknowledging Krishna as the controller, Krishna as the giver, Krishna as the heart, in the heart of everyone, and respect that way. So also this aspect of detachment from family. So Srila Prabhupada didn't do that when his children were tiny. He didn't jump one, at the first, whatever people get distracted by in the material world. It wasn't easy, but he stayed with his family until the appropriate time. And then he detached. And that detachment was, from what I understand, based in a way that reflected the honor of having everything situated and taken care of, to the point where the wife was situated to be cared for by the sons, so forth and so on. And then even at his late stage of life, he embarked on a new aspect of life, which was difficult at his age, but he did it anyway as his commitment to his guru and Krishna consciousness, Lord Chaitanya's mission. So in that way, would you please help us understand this aspect of detachment from a perspective of right deed, instead of, aspects of being entrapped by Maya or false ego, or, being pulled through the various things that are carrots in front of people these days? How can we as devotees or aspiring servants understand what is the best way to do these things, even with our imperfections?
Well, I would like to mention something here. Prabhupada, by Krishna's mercy, he was never attached to his family in a mundane way. And he's frankly said this himself, but he was doing his duty.
Devotees or aspiring servants.
But when that duty got to where there was that duty we need to mute mics. Because we're getting a feedback here. So I wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada as a Grihasta when I first came to England. We didn't have our own places to live. We didn't even live all together. And I had a little baby, 6 weeks old. So it was not such an easy situation. We had no money, and we weren't allowed to work there. So we were forced to be dependent on Krishna. More specifically, we were dependent on the mercy of Srila Prabhupada's instruction. However, it was so difficult that I wrote to Prabhupada, and I asked him, did you find it difficult as a householder to practice Krishna consciousness? And I mean, actually, that was kind of an impertinent question to ask, but he responded, and he said, regarding your question, yes, I did. But he explained why he found it difficult. He said his family, he said, as a Grihastha, I was strictly following, but my family was not inclined, and therefore I had to give up their company. So just, can meditate on that a little bit. You can look up this letter. It's a letter to Malati from Srila Prabhupada. And it was in 68, I believe. Anyways, nobody's suggesting that you give up something in any irresponsible manner. I was just reading through some notes, and there were some memos I had cut and pasted from Prabhupada. So there was one conversation, and there were some of the young men, they wanted to take sannyas. And Prabhupada, when he would ask them, oh, my wife, in one case, oh, my wife won't do what I say. And I mean, this girl was like an angel. She was so accomplished. She could preach, she could chant, she could play mridanga, harmonium, kartal, sing like a Gandharvika. Prabhupada said, why do you want to leave your wife? I mean, she was such an asset to the preaching. And he goes, because my wife won't do what I say. So Prabhupada looks at him and he goes, well, your wife is a very intelligent girl, so you can do what she says. So he was not into breaking up marriages, especially when the reason was a very flimsy reason. In another incident, a person who did end up becoming a sannyas wanted to take sannyas, and Prabhupada was very concerned because the wife was young, and neither did they. She didn't have a child, and he felt this wouldn't be the right thing to do. But he didn't want to discourage this devotee either in his pursuit of spiritual life. And he said, so he gave why he didn't think it might be a good idea at that time. He says, but we can discuss it when I come. So that way he wasn't just slamming the door in his face. And as things turned out, eventually the wife actually agreed that he should take sannyas, and he did, and he's been a successful sannyas. No scandals, no fall downs, nothing, So it really depends upon the person and the situation. But leaving the family aside should not be used as a cheap means of escaping one's parental duties. So the affection of family is perfected through developing our affection for Krishna. The example for this would be when Urmila Devi Dasi, I'm sure you all know her, her father was very wealthy. He was the owner of a very famous wine company, actually. It was called Manoshevitz Wine, and they were from a Jewish family, and this was like the Jewish wine. So, they had good income. He became interested in Krishna consciousness through his daughter, and he would come and visit Prabhupada. He even took up chanting for some time. And every time he would come to visit Prabhupada, he'd bring in appropriate gifts, some fruits, some flowers. He was a very thoughtful person, and he would ask questions. So one time he came with Urmila, and Urmila had her newborn child. So they had some talk, and then her father asked, well, if my daughter loves this child, so loving this child help her develop love for Krishna, love for God? And Prabhupada said, no, developing love of God will help her develop love for her child. So in other words, there was affection, there was attachment, but on what you could say the mundane level. And that same attachment, when turned over to Krishna, that attachment and love would be there for the child, but on the proper perspective. So that's something you can meditate on, maybe. And then it was funny, he was leaving the darshan. Prabhupada always offers gifts, some sweets or some prasad. So he was going to leave and they give him some prasad. And he goes, the father says, every time I come to visit you, you give me something to eat. And I was wondering what the significance of this is. And he says, we're trying to infect you. He said, just like if you associate with somebody with a cold, you'll get a cold. So if you associate with Krishna through his prasadam, you'll get the Krishna disease. You'll become infected with Krishna consciousness.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you so much for your nice answer. And then I was reading in the Gita, which His Holiness Radhanath Swami was speaking. He was mentioning that the Gita was meant for the saintly kings.
Yes, that's a fact. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they said, I asked this question yesterday also. I wanted to hear your own perspective. Saintly kings, it's true, in the Kurukshetra, many of them were kings and kshatriyas.
Right.
And then the Gita is globally being preached. And we are selling the Gita and even to non-devotees who are not kings or kshatriyas. So are we not breaking principles by giving it to non-kings?
Well, there's a difference between a principles set in stone, like the 4 rules and regulations, for example. Those are set in stone, 16 rounds set in stone. Although the Gita, and keep in mind, 5,000 years ago, Gita was spoken, right? There was a whole different culture and climate at that time. People lived longer lives even. They had fine memories. Right now in Kali Yuga, there's not, who has any good qualities? We try to assume some good qualities. We try our best to, be the best devotees we can. Bhagavad Gita is, I would say, the only available resource that will give hope to humanity. So this wide distribution of the Gita, and what to speak of the other books, we're selling sets of Bhagavatam, we're selling sets of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Are any of these people qualified? Probably not. But somehow or other, by coming in contact with Krishna's words through one of Krishna's devotees, they're getting an opportunity, whether it's going to be in this life or the next life. So we take that risk, just like Srila Prabhupada took the risk of initiating so many people who were later, they didn't stick around. They couldn't maintain their vows. But he took that risk in order to give an opportunity for people to perfect the human form of life.
Thank you, Mother. There's a question on the chat room from George Shamega. He said, there's a statement by one senior devotee that to practice devotional service, one need to be stubborn because whatever plans you take today takes time to yield results. Perhaps we need to listen to other devotees' advice also. What actually do we have to do?
I'm not quite sure if I get when he's
a senior devotee mentioned that to practice devotional service, one need to be stubborn.
Yeah, are determined, stubbornly determined.
Yeah. So his question is, maybe we also need to listen to other devotees' advice, maybe to my own understanding now, which is not scriptural, like the person says stubborn. Maybe no details of what kind of stubbornness the person is talking about.
Yeah. Well, we should listen to other devotees, but take a pause for a moment. What devotees? There's so many devotees. If you want to learn higher calculus, are you going to go to the kindergarten? The first, the student who knows 1 + 1 = 2. You're going to go to that student and say, "Can you teach me calculus?" The same way, you have devotees, just like I was. I understood I wasn't the body, but I didn't know what I was, who I was, what my role here, why am I here? I didn't know any of that. So, yes, we should consult devotees, but we should consult advanced devotees. And maybe there's no so-called advanced devotees around, although I find it hard to believe. I think there, by Prabhupada's mercy, there's plenty of advanced devotees available. And you put your question to those persons.
Thank you, Mother. We have second question from Mitravinda again. Please unmute.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mata, for that wonderful and, nicely explained answer to that question. I do appreciate it. So in this aspect of mundane, according to the English vernacular and dictionary definition, meaning dull or earthly instead of spiritual, in terms of balance, for example, a newborn baby, there has to be aspects of the mundane there for taking care of the body of the child. But of course, in aspiring to be servants of the servant on this path of Krishna consciousness, we know, hopefully as many people as possible know that there are ways to to have these spiritual or Krishna conscious ways inserted into the care of the child as well.
Well,
Then
but you're a devotee. You're a devotee. Your child is a devotee. You don't do anything. Everything you do is for Krishna.
exactly.
So even caring for your child that's your service for Krishna. You're the mother. Krishna gave you this child. You got to take care of it. There's nothing mundane about it. Even wiping up those little stooly diapers.
Yes,
is
yes.
devotional service.
Yes. And that's exactly the way I've raised my children, and to the chagrin of some devotees who didn't understand. So, it's again, I wanted to ask also this aspect of understanding from devotees who have experience, or that word you just used regarding, was it devotees who are, I don't know, senior or not senior, I don't know what this word you just used.
I don't either. I can't remember.
Not pure devotees, but devotees who are qualified, I guess, or more experienced.
Devotees who are advanced in devotional service.
Yes. Would you reflect on what that means? Does that mean in terms of years of service? Does that mean in terms of realization? Does that mean in terms of, if they have...
In terms of practical realization? In terms of, one can be, it's not by years, it's by one's practical engagement in Krishna consciousness, where they get practical realization. So that is not limited, because people come in from different levels when they join. You've seen it. Some people walk in the door and they walk right back out again, and the next person comes in and it's, oh my God, I'm home. They get a immediate connection because they past activities, past life activities. They're putting people in place to connect with Krishna. That some people are more resistant, they're not ready yet. So those persons who have demonstrated an ability to absorb the topics related to devotional service and to practice devotional service, naturally they will be gaining real. So these are the type of people who you would want to approach, ideally, in terms of inquiry.
And that would I'm going to assume that would include how they treat other devotees and all living entities, because that's a huge piece that Srila Prabhupada imbibed. He put his arms around everyone. He welcomed everyone into the house that we could all live in. So those instances of how those people who may even have, a position or title, but how are they treating?
Obviously that is part of the picture. Prabhupada said, like the lower level devotee, he'll be very attentive to the deity in the temple, but he's not giving attention or service to the devotees. So that is a less advanced, it's a devotee, but a less advanced devotee. Krishna is more pleased when he sees his devotees serving his devotees than when they actually come before him and try to approach him alone. This is mentioned in the Bhagavatam. So naturally, serving Krishna means serving his devotees. I think in 3:25:25, that is also mentioned in the purport too. So I want to thank you all. I have to get ready for my next.
Thank you, Mother, for coming today, class. Please, we ask all devotees to unmute yourselves and let's chant Hare Krishna to Mother for coming, please. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Hare, Haribo, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mother.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Come on.
Vishamani Garamani Jage Bhatata Samalaya Sate Gela Nagara Praje